Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to the new week. I'm recording this in the morning of Monday, January the 27th, 2025. Okay, so the big news, I was going to talk about some other things, but the reality is that the big news, which seems to have got the market's attention, I mean, this actually came out on a few days ago, but it's like the market has started doing its reading over the weekend, was the implications of the release of DeepSeek, which of course is a Chinese open source sort of artificial intelligence sort of machine platform. And basically what's happening if we look here is that the market's sort of thinking about this and just exploring, as I said, the implications. And the implications here are kind of interesting because essentially this has now been taken by the market, at least since the open, as a threat to OpenAI and ChatGPT. And what you can see here, the two biggest things here is that this is a lot cheaper. It's about sort of I think it's a tenth of the cost or something like that, or maybe even less, and runs on less computing power, less GPU usage. It's open source, so it's not sort of blocked in any sense and can be developed by people or used just directly from the internet. A lot less energy usage because they can just use it from the internet, and it's a much shorter training session, and also much to the point. It's the quality index. So I dug up this sort of graphic here, and you can see it here. So you see here the top left, DeepSeek R1. So this is the model which was released, and you can see here that in terms of the sort of the quality of it, it's almost exactly the same. It scores an 89 compared to the 90 for a ChatGPT here of OpenAI. You see here which gets 90. So the point is what we have here, and then the other thing as well here is you look at the input price and the output price, and you can see here this on the right hand side. You can see here the ChatGPT. The input and output price is very, very expensive. And you can see, compare here the DeepSeek, which is much, much, much cheaper. So I've been doing some reading in the last, kind of 12 hours about it. And the bottom line seems to be, and this is what the market's taking away, is that this is something which is going to be a lot cheaper to buy, a lot cheaper to run, and 99% as good potentially, maybe even better than the OpenAI, the ChatGPT. And essentially, this is throwing, from a market perspective, this is throwing it to doubt all of those high valuations for companies, like Microsoft and especially Nvidia and the chip makers. Because remember that the US government has prevented the Chinese from having the most advanced chips because of sanctions and whatnot. And so this is kind of potentially a game changer. And it's in terms of the valuations for a lot of the NASDAQ stocks and in the tech space and the AI space. And we see this morning that they're being brutally sort of punished for that. I think one thing before we look at a couple of charts, just interesting to see here, or to keep in mind that I think today is probably going to be a lot about positioning and maybe deleveraging rather than necessarily the longer term implications that, suddenly DeepSeek will actually be better than the US and everything. But certainly it's going to sort of put into doubt this idea of US exceptionalism in the AI sort of sector, this idea that the Americans, through a combination of sort of investment and sanctions, will somehow keep the Chinese away, and they will be the sort of the global leader. And that's certainly being upset, that notion today. So let's just have a look and look at a couple of charts and see the reaction here. Very, very strong, a pretty strong risk off sentiment. Excuse me, just having a bit of lady grey this morning. So let's just go through a few different markets, see what's going on. No surprises here. We have the VIX up. So you see the VIX here popping up. So no surprise, suddenly up to 21. So you see how fast that can go there. Now, if we look at the equities, this is really being hit hard. But what's interesting here, you see that the ES having a pretty brutal sell-off. The futures here down to 220 basis points. But even more to the point, look here at NASDAQ. One point this morning was down about 4%. It subsequently rallied a little bit. Well, rally, maybe bounce like a dead cat bounce. That's going to be the key question. But also here, look at the Russell here, which is only down 1%, so much less, and the Dow only down 75 basis points. So clearly here, the NASDAQ is the one which is being hit. And let's just immediately look at some of the big tech stocks. I don't know if we're too early to get some pre-market. I think we'll get some pre-market here. So just give me a second. I'm just going to look at some of the big hitters. So we've got Apple here. Well, actually, I can't say how much they're down, but let's look at the pre-market. So Apple not doing too badly. Really, we've got to see here. Let's have a look. Microsoft down. You see here from 442 down to 422, so down a lot. Amazon, let's have a look at that one, down as well. But Nvidia is going to be brutal. Let's have a look. So Nvidia down from 142 to 126. It had been down even more in the pre-market. Let's have a look at some of the others here. Let's have a look at maybe Broadcom, for example. Broadcom down. Let's have a look. Adobe down not so much. Yeah. So pretty clearly, it's going to be the chips. So it's going to be interesting to look at the SOX, the SOX, the semiconductors today and see what's going on. Now, the big question here is, is this going to be a buy the dip opportunity, or will the market here really sort of say, hey, the whole premise for these high valuations and high forward PEs for some of these companies that the Nvidias, the semiconductors and these kind of companies was based on the idea that there would be enormous spending on sort of AI infrastructure. And to be honest, this is now being sort of thrown into doubt a little bit. So I think the market's, like every analyst, is already sort of looking at everything and trying to understand the implications of this. Because I think what seems to have happened is that the market really has spent the weekend kind of reading. And by the way, here, this is the crypto industry and digital economy ETF here, CRPT, which is also down. Crypto itself is down. So let's just keep on reading, seeing what's going on here, because really the key thing here is to say, okay, this looks like a great product. And by the way, no coincidence, I think, that the Chinese released this just a couple of days ago, just why Trump was sort of in a parallel universe, was releasing the what's it called, the Stargate initiative for AI. So it looks as though the Chinese here are also sort of basically saying to the Americans from a political point of view, it's like, hey, we're not out of the game yet. Even if you want to sort of sanction your most sophisticated chips, we're well capable with our own infrastructure of coming up with very disruptive technologies. Or competitors. And what's interesting to me is that if you start to look at some of the other industries like sort of electric vehicles and a few others, that the Chinese actually now are genuine competitors to the Americans. So the idea of the US stock market being sort of exceptional and outperforming every other stock market, this the release and news of DeepSeek is really sort of throwing that sort of logic into question. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next, well, today for a start and over the next few days. And of course, this suddenly means that the earnings season, which really gets underway big time sort of this week, we have, as you guys can see here, after the Fed, and this is going to be very, very interesting, we have after the Fed on Wednesday, we have Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, IBM, and then on the Thursday, we have Apple and Intel. And a bunch of other interesting companies, a lot of the oil majors on the Friday and whatnot. But really, some of these big tech companies, it's going to be extremely interesting to see their earnings, first of all, to see whether they justify some of these high valuations. And probably more importantly, just what the CEOs are going to say about DeepSeek and just the future. Of course, we don't get the earnings from Nvidia for several weeks, but for sure, it's going to be very interesting in combination with the Fed on Wednesday to see what's going on. So let's just look at some of the market fallout this morning from this sell-off. So obviously, we're seeing the equities down, the US equities down. And again, just across the board, a pretty broad sort of deleveraging, if I could call it that. We're seeing, let's have a look over in Europe, the down, about 1% or so. Probably the Kospi, let's have a look and see if that's down. Not too much. What's interesting is that the Chinese share market is actually up a little bit. You see the CN50, if we look at the CS 300, pretty flat. So it's really the American exceptionalism which is taking the hit here. If we look over in the bond space, we can see that the US bonds getting a pretty big safe haven bid, front end up significantly here. If we look at the 10-year, up significantly. We're looking at the long end also up significantly. So a bit of a bull flattener happening there. I guess on the open that will possibly continue. We'll have to see. We're also seeing some of the SOFR products up as well. But in the real world economy, oil continues to go down a little bit, so that's not really being affected dramatically. But what we didn't get over the weekend was a comment from Trump saying that he'd been on the phone to the Saudis and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, urging them, encouraging them to push down the prices a little bit. I think that is going to be a tall order. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? But anyway, oil still under a little bit of pressure here. And keep in mind Trump's initial comments at the Davos sort of a teleconference on Thursday, I think it was, where he also gave the same message. So Trump's still trying to sort of bully the world into lower energy prices. And to be absolutely honest, if it seems that if the market believes there may be less forward demand for energy, in terms of the AI infrastructure and the data centers, the AI data centers, because this is another thing about DeepSeek is that apparently it doesn't need as much energy to run, and it's a much smaller kind of energy footprint. So a lot of implications there, but oil down a little bit. Another thing over the weekend, which is probably contributing to some of the risk off, is that, as you may have seen, the Colombian president initially refused some of the expatriated or expelled undocumented workers from the US to land in Colombia. And Trump, in a fury, basically said, well, he was immediately going to slap 25% tax on Colombia. And of course, the Colombian president backtracked very, very quickly. So what we're seeing here is a bit of a risk off. We saw the Mexican peso really fall very, very hard on that. So again, at the open, so the peso down pretty hard. We also saw the Canadian dollar coming off quite a lot, but subsequently it's come down a little bit. So there's this whole sort of thing here of, Trump, will he or won't he? Of course, he's threatening to put tariffs on Mexico, potentially Europe, and potentially Canada on February the 1st, which is actually this Saturday. We're getting close to that. It's only 5 or 6 days away. Other things happening this week, of course, we have 3 central bank meetings. We have the Fed on Wednesday. We have Bank of Canada on Wednesday. And of course, we have the ECB on Thursday. Bank of Canada expected to cut, the ECB expected to cut, the Fed expected very much to stay on hold. But what's interesting? We'll get to that in a second. Just want to look a bit more fallout. So see here in terms of the safe haven, we see the dollar actually not getting much of a bid, which is quite interesting. That it hasn't got much of a bid. We're seeing the euro actually benefiting on this kind of non-US exceptionalism story. So rather than a safe haven, we're seeing almost a sense that the US exceptionalism story is being hit a little bit. So interesting to see that the dollar index itself not up that much. We see the euro up. We see the pound actually up. We see really the safe havens here. You see the Swiss franc and actually the yen, looking on the futures, up 120 basis points. And as I was saying last week, not so much because of the Bank of Japan. The yen is extremely sensitive to the yields. And we're seeing that the yields on the 10-year and the 30 and actually all across the US treasuries, the yields are down a lot. So this is really benefiting the Japanese yen. We're seeing the Aussie down and the New Zealand down and CAD basically flat. So we're seeing the commodity currencies not really benefiting. And we're seeing more the European currencies, but especially the classic safe havens, Swiss franc and the yen doing very, very well here. Just in terms of the curve, which I wanted to talk about, but maybe I'll wait until tomorrow. I see here the curve just flattening, just a little bit bull flattening. What is interesting is that gold has not done super well as some kind of safe haven. This could just be because there could be some deleveraging, maybe, with the Nasdaq down almost 4%, maybe some accounts are selling some gold. Interesting to see if this comes down too much more, like significantly comes down, that may be an opportunity just because of a generalized demand for gold, but also a little bit of uncertainty on this news for maybe some call spreads on gold. What I will draw your attention to here, guys, it's quite interesting to see BTC initially had a pretty big sell-off along with the Nasdaq. So we see that BTC here quite correlated with Nasdaq. We're seeing copper also sort of negative on the day and silver negative on the day, not hugely. And part of that will also just be because the Chinese PMIs came in last night. The Purchasing Managers Index not super strong. Now, just getting back to more regular stuff apart from the DeepSeek, and again, I won't say a lot of what I had to say. Just looking here. And a couple of things. We have auctions today. So let's get into the bonds. We have the twos and the, what do we have? We have the twos and the fives today. Then we have the sevens tomorrow. So it's interesting here because normally as we go into the auctions front loaded with the twos, the fives and the sevens, I would have thought the front end would be a little bit soft. But now with this news of DeepSeek, be interesting to see if the market now over the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, we have until 1 p.m., just builds in a little bit of a concession at the front end. So that's going to be quite interesting just to see how that works out. The other thing which I've been keeping my eye on is, of course, the dollar. So let's just have a look at the dollar index. And the point is here is that as the yields sort of come off a bit, the dollar, it could come down to this level here. I've got my eye on this 106.50 level. I don't particularly think that the dollar is necessarily going to sell off more than that, or it will not be broadly supported, because at the end of the day, the US economy is doing well. The Fed is still a little tighter than some of the other central banks, but I do see possibility for the US dollar just to come back down here. And if we look at some of the differentials here, which I'm going to look at, especially in the European space, which is, where are we? Yeah, so if we look at here, let's say the two's two, so this is the US two minus the German two. I think there's still, you see, this has been coming in quite a lot. It's been narrowing. I think this could come in down to 1.9, 1.85. At that point, that's probably going to be enough. There's resistance there. That to me, that kind of zone there, or if we look on the fives, something a bit lower here, like about 1.9 on the five differentials and on the tens differentials, maybe around about 2%. My point is that if you look at all the differentials between the US yields and the equivalent in the German space, I think there's still another 5, 7, 8 basis points that those yields could compress a little bit. And then I think could be the point where one potentially could think about going long the US dollar again. And that would correspond to, as I say, the dollar index coming down. A little bit more, maybe something, maybe down to about 106.30, 106.10. And then if we actually look at the euro index, which I have here, you can see that the euro index, it's actually broken the level of 104.60. So it broke above that pretty key level here, about 104.60. And it could, I think, get up to, maybe even a bit further up to, 105, sort of 80, 106, even up there. I think at that point there, that was suddenly would become quite an interesting level to short or maybe even to do straddles, because if the US does start to sort of sell off and show signs of weakness, there could be more upside or indeed more downside. So that's definitely going to be quite an interesting level there. And if you just look straight at the euro rather than the euro index, again, that will correspond to around about 106 up there. It would be a pretty interesting level. Okay, guys, I might leave it there because I did want to speak a bit more about the Fed and a few other things, but I think I might wait until tomorrow and just see the market fallout today from the deep sea thing. So let's just have a quick look. I'm going to put this on, let's say, a 4-hour chart. Just want to break it down a little bit and look at some of these stocks here, just see what's going on here. Um, so we see, obviously, as I said before, we see VIX up, just coming off a little bit here. The ES, okay, so it seems to be just having a little bit of a bounce back here. I think possibly the way to look at this is just to see if the market wants to use this as a buying opportunity. This level up here, 6045, looks pretty key because that before has been a key level. And if we actually just throw a fib on this, we can just let's say on the 4-hour, which I quite like for these kind of scenarios. If we look at the fib here, you can see that that would be approximately sort of a 50% retracement here. So quite interesting here to see what's going on. We have had a little bit of a bounce, but at this point, it's only about a 2.36, a 0.236 bounce, if that from this latest sell-off. So let's see what happens there. And of course, with Nasdaq, similar kind of situation here. We'll be seeing with Nasdaq. Let me just put a fib on it as well. This is the one I really wanted. You see here on the Nasdaq, similar kind of thing about a 25% fib retracement. So still a lot of repair work to do today. So let's have a look at the open. Just maybe the final thing to look at here are some of these sort of stocks. Where are we? I've got the Mag 6 here somewhere. Where are we? I thought I had those. Oh, no, sorry. Bear with me here, guys. Um, so on this one, what I'm trying to do here is to get up the mag. Yeah, hit Tech Mag 6. Just let those load up. So if we put those, let's say on I don't know, an hourly chart, let's just see what's going on there. Some of those just see. So we see here Apple not too bad. Nvidia is really the one which is being hit a lot. 142 currently is about 8 o'clock here. 126 actually after 8:14. So we see Meta down a bit. We see Microsoft, I think, is going to be hit quite hard as well. So trading at 426, down from 443. So it really looks like the main losers at this point. We're seeing Meta and sorry, Microsoft and Nvidia. So definitely have to keep an eye on those at the open and just see if people take that as a buying opportunity or as more analysis comes out about DeepSeek. It will really be a sort of a game changer. We shall see. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Let's keep on talking. Have a great day. Thank you.